Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Key Ingredient Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Philip McCabe. Philip is a local entrepreneur who started his journey at a very young age. Philip, thanks for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me, Stefan.
Looking forward to the conversation today because your story is a little bit different than some other people I've interviewed recently. So if you don't mind, maybe just tell our listeners and viewers just a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Naples, Florida, which for Naples is sort of rare, I suppose. Naples is a second home destination for the most part. It's very seasonal, and so it's not necessarily a big place for people raising their families. But my dad and my mom decided to move here from the Northeast, like many have, especially recently.
Yes.
Years ago, and so I grew up here with a close group of friends, and I played tennis at a young age, played sports, went to a small private school called community school for most, but of my younger years of school, and then I ended up moving on from there to a boarding school, and then finally graduating from Barron Collier, which was a public school here in Naples, playing tennis there. From a young age, I guess you kind of want to see it in the lens of how I ended up, moving into my career. So,
well, you were born into entrepreneurship, and I think that's the interesting part of this story.
Right. So, my dad, he's from Dorchester, Mass, and was had quite a story growing up and getting into entrepreneurship as a first generation success, in his family. And so that's very inspiring as a son, and growing up in Naples is definitely a little different than growing up in Dorchester. Right.
So, a little bit. Yeah.
But nonetheless, I, would skip school when I was a kid, not to kind of lay around and watch movies, but to hang out at his office.
Well, it's funny you say it. So that started in kindergarten, correct? You were shadowing your dad,
right?
Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, interesting.
So I mean, from a very young age, it was business. I mean, in terms of our relationship, we would go out and throw the football sometimes, and kind of do typical things as father and son, but really, I spent a lot of time. My brother and I have one older brother, and he's 18 months older than me, and we spent a lot of time in the office behind his desk, under his desk, running around, right, at a very young age. But I mean, as we grew. And as I grew, I started picking up on things more and more, and specifically in hospitality, I don't know if it's something that I was, born with, or, it's this lived, learned sort of question, right? Or if it's something, that I noticed really from a very young age, growing up in hotels, so he's a stereotypical innkeeper, which is what they're called more so in the Northeast.
Sure.
And you see the hospitality, and you see it with the way that he communicates with guests, or he's still a general manager, and so always has been. And I think that, that sort of exposure that I had, sort of added to what I ended up doing. Right.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because that was one of the things I was going to ask you. So you mentioned sports, right? Playing sports with your dad a little bit. And then you also mentioned being born, with the entrepreneurial bug or whatever you want to call it, or is it something you learn online? It's funny because when you look at athletes, we always wonder that, right? You see like LeBron James and his son's a great basketball player. Was he born with those traits, or was it because he was with such a superstar that was able to train him? And maybe we'll never know the answer to that, but certainly you had a pretty good upbringing when it comes to that, and having a great mentor, I guess, is the point.
For sure. Having a mentor, but I do think that it is like you mentioned, it's kind of a bug, and I think that is something that is sort of inept and inherent. I started my first sort of company, as you will, that no one really knows about, but it was when I was maybe 15 years old.
Okay.
And it was called High Tech and Handy.
High Tech and Handy. By the way, people know about it now, but keep going.
Right. So it was, I made business cards and everything, and I was excited about it because I lived in a golf course community with my mom at the time, and we were surrounded by elderly, right? And this is the period of the first iPhone, and this is the period of actually, I think it was younger than 15. I think I was more like 12,
okay,
or 13. And Apple computers starting, and then all of a sudden, the elderly, right, are getting into technology,
sure.
like
trying to figure it out, right?
Exactly. Trying to figure it out, trying to set up their first Mac, right? Or trying to set up their first, what have you, iPod, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea was, it was sort of a full service because I was so into that technology stuff back then, and so it was a full service setup and consult. And
so you would go to their homes and help them kind of either set things or set things up, fix things,
right.
Navigate
like new technology.
Wow. So how did you advertise?
I just walked around the community.
Okay.
Honest.
No, I like that.
Put my cards in mailboxes.
I love to hear that because, like I said, it's a bug because you started so early doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's stay on that a little bit. So here you are, 12, 13. You're introduced to entrepreneurship. You already started your own business that now everybody knows about. What happens next? I mean, what were some of the things that you learned by shadowing your dad that you thought was really valuable as you started to grow as an entrepreneur yourself?
Well, I would say, first of all, I've learned so much more in the past, let's say, 3 years than I did, prior. I think prior was sort of unrealized knowledge, and now it's become so much more realized because I'm older. I understand responsibilities a lot more. I'm educated now, and sort of I can see things more full circle than I did before.
Okay.
Before I learned what hard work was. I learned what dedication was. I sort of learned more value oriented things. Not to take things for granted, and to stay humble, and even a guy so successful as my dad will still, wash his car every Sunday, right? And so to see a story like that, which is one in who knows how many,
sure.
is inspiring, and for sure it helps me to stay motivated, and so and to keep pursuing and keep the next thing coming, right? And that was something I learned from a young age. There was always on to the next project, build one building and then move on and not stop. So
I love that. So you grew up seeing hard work.
Right.
You were able to witness your dad, the way he interacted with other people, I think is important And those are some of the things I want to get to with you in your business now. But how do you hire people? How do you work with people? I mean, these are all things you got to witness at a very young age.
Right.
Which is great.
Yeah, I think that back then I didn't understand the hiring portion of it, but I did understand the way that he interacted with his staff, for example. I did know the value of people, and especially in the hospitality industry, that's everything.
Sure.
You're only as good as your people are, and you can create an amazing setting, right? You can create an unbelievable hotel room, with the best mattress and the beautiful artwork and TV, Apple TV, all the amenities, right? But if you don't have that warm embrace when you walk in and check in, it's not the same.
It's interesting. You just mentioned noticing all the little things that those of us take for granted when we go to a hotel or a restaurant or whatever it may be. So let's move on a little bit. So when you graduated college, okay, what did you do next? Did you go right into the business, or did you take some time off? What did you do?
Yeah, so I took a month.
That's not long. Not today. People take a lot longer than that.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I took a month up in Maine, which is where we have some roots, and I think it was about 2 months, and then I came back down to Naples, and we were renovating our offices that I used to just kind of hang out in. Didn't really have my own office, until after college.
Okay.
And,
what year was this, by the way, roughly?
This was 2019.
Okay.
So, yeah, 2019, 3 years ago.
Okay.
And so I was given a role in the company, which, by the way, the offices are very small family offices.
Okay.
So it's myself, my brother, my dad, our CFO, and our CAO, and so 3 Irish guys in an office. It's fun sometimes.
I'm sure it is.
But so I was really sort of put on charge of capital improvements for our main operating entity at the time, which is still currently the Inn on Fifth, 119 room boutique, Forbes 4-star hotel.
Yeah.
And so I managed immediately a $5 million capital investment into the hotel. And so that was all new bathrooms, a new for the guest rooms. So it wasn't for all 119 rooms. It was for 87 rooms and suites, which are on the main side. And then we did the pool area and added a pool bar, a variety of different things, which was very helpful for me and quick learning in terms of managing a general contractor, and then we put a POS system in at the bar.
Very
right?
nice.
And
yeah.
then we're quickly making a drink menu, and just kind of it wasn't very large, but it was big enough for me to get a quick inside scope of how these things are created. And so that was my first big project, really.
Did you stay within budget?
No.
Okay.
Right.
Because that's not easy to do. I mean, here you are, you have a certain amount of money, a certain amount of capital that
right.
you can use, and you have to figure out those 87 rooms or whatever it may be of how you're going to make that money last and be efficient as possible.
Well, it was interesting because actually the budget kept growing.
Okay.
And because we know that that it's an asset, of course, in Naples, Florida.
Sure.
Which recently, we just saw that Wall Street Journal article like 2 weeks ago about real estate in the United States and relative to real estate in Naples, Florida, right? And how it has become, just so valuable,
Sure.
and relative to the rest of the country,
especially for the Inn on Fifth. I mean, that is an iconic landmark down here. So yeah,
right.
It makes sense to do so.
Exactly. It was sort of the beginning of the street of Fifth Avenue. And it was what started that renaissance that Fifth Avenue had, that I was not, sort of alive for, but, nonetheless, it did happen. Fifth Avenue was a failed street, and now it's, an unbelievable attraction.
It really is.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just keeps getting better. So, but, we saw that every dollar, that you put in, you get out.
You get back
much more.
Makes sense.
So the more that we thought about the type of tile, or the the type of the mirrors that we put in the bathrooms, backlit, right? And it's like these things add $100 here, $100 there, right, per room. But it's money well spent, because the guest, it's they notice these things.
Sure.
Even if they don't notice, they do notice.
I would agree with you on that. It may not be something we take note of, but we do notice it. You feel it. I think it's a feeling.
It
when
is
you
a
go.
feeling.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. So yeah, actually that's the same as the Vine Room in the sense that the attention to detail in design, even if the guest doesn't consciously notice it, they feel it.
Yeah. So you mentioned a Vine Room. Let's discuss that a little bit. Tell me about the Vine Room, the vision. Tell me a little bit about it, please.
So the Vine Room is a 70-seat speakeasy, and that word speakeasy sort of it takes on a variety of roles, values, that create the concept. So it's not a restaurant, it's not a bar, it's a speakeasy. And so it's not something that's easily defined, right?
Okay.
And I think that's what sort of makes it great, really, is because it's unlike everything. And I think that's what also brings so much intrigue. I mean, people say that there's nothing like this in Naples, and so what it is a hidden oasis, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I've told everybody I wanted. Originally, my idea was to create a place that you're truly feel transported in. Right.
Okay.
So the moment you walk through the doors, and the door itself is hidden, right? And it's sort of understated from the outside.
Right.
And then, you walk in and it's kind of like this, oh my God moment, right? It's like, whoa, like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because the first couple weeks, actually, before we were even open, and I was managing, the construction and everything, and people were outside, and pedestrians walking, and they wanted to come in and look, and I let them in, and they're like, "Whoa, where did this come from? When did this happen?" Right? And so, that was the whole idea, and to have amazing cocktails, fun cocktails, smoke, and create a real experience, more so than a place to just drink and
right
and talk. Right, it's like a show when you walk in.
Do you serve food there as well?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah,
so is it appetizers? Is it
it's tapas?
Okay.
Yeah, small plates. Mini lobster rolls and Kobe sliders and stuff that's executable, but with a high attention to ingredients and fine food products.
So when did you open up the Vine Room?
So we opened in November, specifically November 22nd,
Okay.
because it was 2 days before Thanksgiving, and our second night open was the night before Thanksgiving, which in the United States is the biggest drinking night of the year,
Sure it is.
right? So that's the night of the year that the most alcohol is consumed.
So you had that all planned out, didn't you?
I did not.
You did not. Okay. You could have lied about it and said you did. Interesting. So,
That
okay.
was a
So
fun night.
so in November, so what has, first of all, what's business been like? I mean, down here, I mean, it's been pretty unbelievable. I mean, imagine Fifth Avenue through, even during the pandemic. I mean, most of the pandemic probably has done pretty well, but how's the Vine Room been doing?
So business has been amazing in terms of what in terms of numbers, but more so what has been rewarding is the guest reaction and the guest interaction. And it's sort of from the moment that we open, like I said, it's not a restaurant model, it's not a bar model, it's an in between. So it's almost an identity crisis from the moment that you open, right?
Okay.
Because we're trying to understand who we are and what we are based on the way that the guest reacts to us, right? So are they drinking more wine by the glass? Are they drinking more cocktails? Are they buying bottles of wine? I have an amazing list of wine by the bottle. So
Okay.
I wanted to have the best place in Naples to have an amazing glass of wine, bottle of wine, craft cocktail, small plates, but have a setting that you just can't beat to enjoy,
Yeah.
and it's not a place to go and get drunk, right? It's a place to go and really look around, relax, and experience something different.
So it sounds to me like it's the type of place, it's whatever the guest wants it to be to some
Right.
degree, right? I mean, you could kind of customize, if I just want to go for nice cocktails tonight, that's what it is. If I want tapas, that's what it is. If I want a combination, if I want a people watch, whatever it may
Definitely
be.
people watch. Yeah.
Interesting concept. So what was it like? I guess, what was it like getting it off the ground? I mean, as far as things like hiring and planning it out, I mean, you already experienced in that regard, but what was that like? What was that experience? Would you learn that, I guess, was easier than you thought and maybe more difficult than you thought?
So first of all, I was a year late.
Okay. That's pretty typical, I would imagine, though, right? That's probably normal.
No, because it was we pushed it back.
Okay.
So
okay.
because of COVID.
Because of COVID, sure.
Yeah. So we were going to open in the fall of 2020, and luckily I did not, because things happen differently.
Sure.
And I think that first of all, luckily I did not, because I don't think I would have had the business. Even though the pandemic in Naples was quite soft in terms of hospitality businesses. It didn't. It was not a business killer as it was elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so we're blessed for that. But I opened in the fall of 2021, and construction, it was sort of at the, I would say, sort of the beginning of the supply chain, crisis that we really have now in so many things. But construction being, one of the worst, in terms of casualties, I suppose.
Sure.
And so we were probably halfway through construction when we started seeing like, oh, those light fixtures are going to be 6 months, or and this is, I'm supposed to be finishing up in about 3, right? And it's like, oh, well, that those strip lights are going to be a year, right? And then you start getting all of these lead times that we really weren't even thinking about, becoming problematic, that became, almost a nightmare.
Sure.
And kitchen equipment. I was on the phone, leading up to the opening last. I pushed opening because you're pushing so many things, right? Your construction is going on and on and on, and that's a day-to-day thing, right? And then you have hiring, which has already taken place, say 3 weeks to 4 weeks up to the opening of the restaurant, right? So conducting interviews and creating a staff and an opening staff, and then a training schedule, right?
Sure.
And that's, for me, it was a 2-week training schedule for everybody to get on board with our DNA, our menu items, actually creating the menu items. And then, in terms of training them to make them, we already had recipes and all the menu items worked out. And then, steps of service, all these things related to training was a 2-week process, right? So every week that the kitchen hood, for example, right, was delayed, it's like, okay, I got to push out, a full 2 weeks of training.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And so I have to tell staff, we're not going to start training next week. It's going to be the following week. Right. And so that was very difficult. Finding people in the first place was difficult.
That's what I was just about to ask you. So I'm sure that was difficult at the beginning, and probably still is if you're hiring at this point. So what's the hiring? Have you found it challenging? Like everybody else?
Absolutely. So initially it was extremely challenging. To find, a sort of skeleton staff of people that would, count, they counted on you and they counted on the concept.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
We're new. It's much easier, especially in that hiring climate, which is the same climate today, right? Where you, in the hospitality industry, you can go out and get a job tomorrow, right? At, some of the best restaurants, because pretty much everybody is hiring.
Right. Right.
And so in that regard, it's like, okay, how do you motivate and inspire people to believe in the concept that has never been open?
That's interesting because, going back to the inn, that already had its status, right? So when you hire people for the inn, they know what to expect. They know what it's like. So this is a whole new concept. And like you said, you almost need them to buy into something they haven't quite experienced yet.
Right. So every interview, that I conducted along with my general manager that I had at the time, it was sort of the first part of the interview, was me selling them on the Vine Room, right? Because before I even wanted to hear, what they had to say about their experience and why they're the right candidate for the position, right? They need to know from me that this thing is exciting and it is going to rock Naples, right?
Yeah.
And that you want to be a part of it, right? And so, the first thing that I did for every single interview was I showed them renderings. I showed them the whole menu, the inspiration of the menu, DNA, sort of, and I got them excited about the Vine Room. And then I said, okay, why do you think you should be a part of the team?
Interesting. Okay. So you came up with the concept yourself for the Vine Room? Was it a vision that you had? Is that?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
So I came up with a concept for a small, intimate speakeasy. I've always thought, speakeasy, I sort of had a little hobby for them, but not to the extent where I would go and travel for speakeasies.
Right. Okay.
But there is that population of people.
Sure.
That in fact, we had 3 guests last week drive from Hollywood, Florida,
Really, just to come see the
just to come to the
wow,
Vine Room.
interesting.
Right. So there are those, those speakeasy enthusiasts, right? That every city, and there's a lot. Every city that they're in, they make sure that they seek out, speakeasies because of that experience. It's cool. It's like a hidden place that you feel, you feel some sort of, I don't know, you feel good about finding.
Sure.
So
Interesting. So, what would you say, Philip, is the most difficult part of being an entrepreneur? Because a lot of people listening right now are either business owners already, they like your story, maybe just in general, and they want to find out more about places to visit and go to down here in Naples, or they are just aspiring one day to be an entrepreneur. How would you respond to that?
Well, the most difficult part. So I would say that really, well, that's difficult because I mean, there's a lot of difficult parts. But for me, right now, I think that it's being at such a young age that you have to be a leader, right? But you also know that there's plenty of people out there that actually have more experience than you.
Sure.
Because they're, well older, right? So
Yeah.
I think that it's knowing, knowing that you can learn very quickly, and that, at least in the hospitality industry, as an entrepreneur in the hospitality industry, it's not rocket science. The way that service works, the way that guest interaction works, and sort of how you can navigate both management and of staff and management of guests, and so I think that each experience that you have, it's important to really analyze and learn from it as quick as possible.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
To make up for your lack of experience. Right.
What would you say is your favorite part of being an entrepreneur? What wakes you up in the morning? What gets you excited?
Definitely the response from guests. Definitely creating something from nothing, and it was I have pictures actually, of stages of the development of the space, right, from a concrete shell, right, to all of a sudden this place where people can come and they can enjoy their family that they haven't seen for a year or 2 years, right? Or they can enjoy the company of new friends, new girlfriends, new fiancés, and create memories in a place that they find to be intriguing and an amazing experience. So
that must be very gratifying to see people actually enjoying being at the Vine Room. So I could see that.
it is.
Yeah. Final question for you, if you don't mind. Vision. So like any entrepreneur, you always have a vision, right? Where do you see things next 5 years or 10 years from now? Do you see yourself expanding the Vine Room and seeing more Vine Rooms out there, or just different types of businesses?
Sure. So that's a good question, Stefan. I would say that for sure we're the Vine Room is a pilot, so we're testing and changing things every day, based on the way that the guest has reacted, and making amazing changes by the day, and really trying to nail down the concept, so that we can deploy it here or there. So for sure there is a vision of growth of the Vine Room concept, but that will be, under its own umbrella as far as I'm concerned for me. I can see the vine room growing over here in this hand, but then, starting something else over here in this hand, right? So, I want the vine room to be its own sort of, airplane, so to speak, that's on autopilot, right? And growing, but it's not necessarily my, everyday focus.
Sure.
So I for sure I like to I think my favorite part of the industry and of entrepreneurship is really creating a concept, and in a place that people can either stay, in terms of transient lodging, or go for food and beverage. And so it's that creation that really is what motivates me. So I want to create something else as well.
Love it. Very inspiring story. I appreciate you sharing it with us. Philip, excellent interview. We appreciate you being on, sharing kind of your thoughts on entrepreneurism, and you have a great story. And I wish you a lot of success. I look forward to seeing additional vine rooms out there one day in various locations. So thanks again for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Stefan.